Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of your PCM Hockey podcast. As today is episode 6 here on February 15th of the day that we are recording this. Once again, I'm met by Calvin, Hector, and Mark Jones. Once again, all their links will be down in the description below. Check out their Twitter. They got some good stuff going on there. As we had a pretty crazy week of hockey for both the Oilers and the Canucks, and the Flames, of course. The Flames were going up against the Canucks most of the week and had a game against the Jets. And the Oilers continued their winning streak up until tonight, where they lost against the Jets, which was an absolute bummer. And during this podcast, we're still watching the Flames versus Canucks, as that is headed into the second intermission, I think. Am I correct on that, guys?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So how's your days going, guys? And how are you enjoying this upcoming week? And how are you enjoying Family Day? Because I know I think we all had a day off, if I'm correct.
Yeah, nice day to chill. And I haven't looked in terms of hockey. I know a little bit about what's coming up this week in terms of whatever. And nice to always get an extra day off or what have you. So yeah, it should be much better if Vancouver can figure out a way to grab a point out of this game that they pretty good at for a while. But we'll divert to Calvin on his thoughts on whatever. But I'll let you run with it there, guys. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm having a good family day, or as I like to call today, discount chocolate day, since Valentine's was yesterday. And, I didn't have many plans for that, so just went out and bought some cheap chocolate.
Yeah, it's always nice hooking it up on that cheap candy, cheap chocolate. Getting hooked up on that. That's always nice. So let's get right into today's episode, as we're going to continue the discussion on our three favorite teams, of course. We'll start everything off with Calgary Flames, as this week they went up against the Winnipeg Jets. They got a big W out of that game, and then against the Vancouver Canucks in an absolute weird one, where the Canucks absolute bombshelled the Canucks, as Jacob Markstrom played huge. It was like 40-some shots for the Canucks, really giving some energy, which is what they're kind of giving tonight. They didn't have a great second period, but the Canucks finally kind of starting to find their steps. So we'll send this one over to Calvin, and he'll give us his thoughts on how well the Calgary Flames played in that past week.
Well, by far, the Winnipeg game was probably the Flames' best 60 minutes they've played recently. They were able to win and pull, and Winnipeg's a good team, so don't get me wrong, it was a close game. They only pulled it out 3-2 final against Winnipeg. It was really, really hard and tough battle for them to get, and then they had to prepare for a Vancouver team that was already on a big losing skid, so kind of having to do a whole 360, going from that competitiveness with another team that's basically identical to you on paper, but then flip over to a Canucks team that's been struggling with their defense and getting lots of goals scored on them. It was great that we were able to get the first game out of the 4, but then again, the Flames seemed to maybe struggle a little bit with coming out of the gate right away, because it wasn't a full 60 minutes, that first game against Vancouver. And of course, Vancouver losing streak continues. They just get more and more frustrated. So when we played them Saturday night, oh God, I mean, the Flames just weren't up to the challenge, and unfortunately they lose. And it wasn't even Markstrom's fault. He had another great game in net, as he's had all season long for the Flames. The offense dried up, and they're losing all the puck battles. And right now we're on game 3 of 4, and it's looking like another close one. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I mean, it's important the Flames in these series, especially this one where it's 4 games, they can't really stay on their heels too much, because the more series that you end up splitting with the team, or even losing, 3 out of the 4, well, then you're just going to find yourself dropping lower and lower in the standings. So it's important tonight that the Flames finish it off strong. They're up 3-2 right now, and hopefully they come out with the win, but we'll have to see.
I think the biggest story for Calgary has been Jacob Markstrom. One of the analytics I've been seeing is goals saved above expected. He has a 5.3, which is second in the league, and Andrei Vasilevsky is above that with 8.4, and then you have Peterson down there with 5.2. Markstrom is having one hell of a year, and he's really been a big backstop for the Calgary Flames, which is been a big reason why they're able to shut the door on majority of the games that they play, and reason why it's low scoring, which is what Calgary was really needed. They needed a competent goalie to step in there and to give them some solid games instead of having Riddick and Talbot be your tandem. Now you have a great goalie in Markstrom, who's just been absolutely fantastic for the Calgary Flames. And not just that, Sam Bennett, who has had some trade rumors lately, has been doing decent. He's been doing a lot better than what he has been. So how do you think of Sam Bennett this week? And do you still think he's going to be traded? And do you have any updates on that?
Well, it appears management and Bennett must have had a talk, because for the Winnipeg game, they ended up sticking him on the second line. And so, of course, that was the whole issue to begin with, was him not getting the minutes he wanted and, giving up opportunities, being put on the third and fourth line, just kind of slotting in as an extra winger. And, I mean, he's proven himself in this stretch. He's showing that. I haven't noticed him too much tonight against Vancouver. But that's mostly because the Flames have been battling a bit of an injury bug right now, so everyone's kind of trying to fill in different roles, especially they're missing right now Michael Backlund and Derek Ryan, so those are two key centers for the Flames depth-wise that are out of the lineup currently, so that's not ideal. But Bennett's playing the way Bennett should be playing. He's noticeably on the ice, using his big frame to finish checks and make some turnovers, and then he's got a couple points to show for it. As for trades, I'm hearing a ton of rumors, but still hearing rumors about other guys like Goudreau, and it's just, I don't think the Flames will be very active until it gets closer to the trade deadline, as I said in the last podcast. So I don't think he's going anywhere soon, but you never know, things could change just like that in a snap of a finger.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we'll send this one over to Mark, and we'll talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks this past recent, as the day that we made the podcast, the Maple Leafs beat the Canucks, and then once again lost again to the Flames, 6 in a row, and they were finally able to snap that winless drought on the 13th with a big win over the Flames. And it's another close one here, once again, like we were already talking about. So Mark, talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks and how well they are, kind of like they're still struggling, and do you think the team is kind of going on an uptrend right now, especially with how they played yesterday and how they are playing today?
Yeah, I think, we'll wait and see how this game plays out, the rest of it. I have only been watching out of the corner of my eye the game tonight, sort of half listening to the radio feed and listening. And there's been a couple bad moves. There's a couple players on the team that seem to just have a black cloud hanging over them. And that would be, Virtanen. Not making smart moves. He could have, put it off the board, as a lot of analysts have been saying on, I think it was the 2-1 goal tonight. And then there's other guys like Schmidt, who came over in the trade because Vegas had cap issues. They needed to free up some space. But I'm not fully sold on him right now. And I don't know, so where to answer your question, it looked encouraging tonight. The other game the other night was good. Tonight it started out good, a 5-on-3 goal. They're kind of, what's the word, pushing back figuratively against Markstrom. Markstrom is a very good goalie. And as I've said before, I think, certainly Calgary, threw the money at him because they wanted something to stabilize their goaltending. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. If he has a history of being, they have him run the gauntlet, and then there's going to be injuries creep up. And I'm not wishing that on the guy. I'm just saying it's going to be interesting to see how well he can endure this thing going long term. And I think as far as for Vancouver, to bring it back to them, I think what has to happen is, there are some key pieces gone from this team. Not even going to talk about Toffoli, because Toffoli was here for a short time. He was a great addition, and I knew he would be. But we're talking about, you've lost, two key defensive parts, and that's Tanev and Markstrom. The team's going to have to step up, and they showed they could do it the other night. But the one big thing that comes back right now is Vancouver is being hindered by some of these contracts and some of these their inability to maybe make some changes that they would like to right at the moment. And I just think it's a roll of the dice as to what's going to happen right now. If they can make the rest of this game respectable, as there's one period left as we record this. It's 3-2 Calgary after Vancouver was up 2-0. I think it's just, it's been some bad luck. Another goal goes in off Schmidt and off Demko, I think is what it was. It seems Schmidt's had at least a couple of those goals. I think he had one just the other night where it was just an insane the way it went in off of him, something like that. So it's really hard to say because I didn't think Vancouver would be whatever they are right now, 7-11 after 18 games. I thought they would be at least 500. I thought they would be, in the top 5 of the division. Right now, they're what, 6th?
Yeah.
So it's I don't mean to sound so wishy-washy, but it would not surprise me at this point if the season becomes a write-off. But they're not at that point yet, and they're going to have to. I don't know what's happened with Virtanen, if he's going to get benched or has been benched the rest of this game, but some of his decisions are bad. And I used to be a Virtanen fan. I'm not so much now. So it's not a direct answer. I would say it's too early to, to sort of throw in the towel on this, but certainly the first period or most of the first period was a lot better than, how the game flipped around and it's now 3-2 Calgary.
Yeah, for sure. One player also from the Calgary or from the Vancouver Canucks, just in general, Vancouver has not been a very good team defensively this year, especially having some injuries with Travis Hamonic and also a big player, Tyler Mott, being injured as well. But this team is 31st in goals against this year, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And from analytics, Quinn Hughes has went from being decent defensively to really, really dropping defensively. And I think one player the Vancouver Canucks miss a whole lot is Christopher Tanev. Tanev has been, I got to say, I give praise. I was a little bit doubtful of Christopher Tanev because of his injury history. The contract might come back to bite you in the behind later on once Christopher Tanev gets a little bit older. But Tanev has been pretty solid alongside Noah Hanifin. So I'll let Calvin take care of this one. How do you think of Christopher Tanev's play, and especially is it boosting Noah Hanifin's play? And how do you think of the defensive pairing so far?
Who are you putting that to Calvin or to myself?
Yeah, Calvin.
Oh, sorry guys, internet's lagging a little bit, but when I think of Chris Tanev, I'm not even thinking about the contract because I think just the fact how much he puts his body on the line is kind of almost worth it, and especially if it is deemed that he's overpaid a little bit. I don't think we're paying him to be necessarily the top point producer for defensemen on the Flames. So we've got Rasmus Andersson for that. Hanifin jumps in on the play. Yusuf Valimaki will turn into a little bit of an offensive weapon as he gets, more accustomed to playing in the National Hockey League. He's been biting the injury bug the last couple seasons. We're paying Tanev to basically be a shot blocker and just a fighter on the D-line there, get the big guys out of Markstrom's way, even though Markstrom's a pretty big goalie, so it's kind of hard to screen him. But so the contract doesn't bother me, and I think Tanev's play right now, as long as he stays healthy, because yes, that's the one danger of being such a defenseman that blocks the shots, takes the hits, is that you're bound to get injured every now and again. You don't necessarily want to jump in front of a Shea Weber slap shot, but if the game's on the line, you're going to do it, and Tanev's got that mindset. But before I finish here, we talked about it last week with Mark about the Canucks struggles and how maybe that Jim Benning's time with the Canucks might be done. But since we posted that podcast, Canucks owner Francesco Aquilini goes on Twitter, as he's known to do, when he fired the anthem singer Mark Donnelly. He goes on the Twitter and says that he's got full confidence in Benning and Travis Green, and that he doesn't have any plans to change anybody in that office. So what do you think about that, Mark? That really caught me a little bit off guard.
Well, I'm always take it with a grain of salt. That whole, confidence thing, there's been time and time again where you've seen with various organizations where, they'll give a a confidence boot. This is wonderful. Everything's great. Blah blah blah, and then the person lands up being let go or what have you. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say that there's no credibility there. What I'm saying is that I think he probably he doesn't want to make changes, and probably he does want to have his faith in in that ownership group. But the fact of the matter is that sorry, multitasking here, guys.
No worries.
We can probably edit that a little bit. I can redo it here. What I was saying is that Aquilini basically, I think he's a very passionate owner. There's a lot of short-sighted, or for honestly, there's people that don't know the history of, I'm going to call it bad ownership. The ownership in this town that before the Aquilinis, I mean, many people won't know about, the McCaws that owned it yet. Yeah, they saved the team in a sense when Arthur Griffiths got maybe too far extended with, money when he brought in the Grizzlies and things like this. But the fact of the matter is McCaw was a different. He was the opposite. I mean, they say Aquilini doesn't want to take interviews or he doesn't want to do whatever, but McCaw was even more reserved, and he would have people doing his legwork, and he wasn't in touch. I think Aquilini's, they're trying to be passionate. They're Francesco is basically the figurehead, as it were. He wants the team to win, and I'm sure, in a sense, there is some truth to that. But that whole confidence thing of, I can't think of specific examples, but there's been other franchises out there that said, we have full support, and it'll often be joked, we give full support to this coach or to whatever, and then the coach lands up getting let go. It doesn't mean that they're going to make that change, and I'm not saying the coach is the issue. Personally, more and more, I've done some reading and sort of looking into it through other people that have tweeted some stuff, and the work done by Benning, there were a lot of people behind the scenes that did a lot of the good things, and some of these contracts that he signed some of the players to, and the numbers that he gave them, the money that he's given them, Louis Eriksson and things like that. I definitely think that if the Canucks miss the playoffs this year, then that'll be one, maybe it's 2 seasons, I think, but it'll be one playoff series win. If you don't include the play-in series last year, it'll be one playoff series win, that being St. Louis, since he came in for the 2014-2015 season. So that'll be basically 7 seasons, I guess, or however you count it out. I think that works out to 7 seasons. That's longer than even Mike Gillis was here. I think that's longer than before their time Brian Burke was here. Certainly longer than Dave Nonis. So they've tried to give some traction here, but there's still that whole thing about what happened behind the scenes with why is Linden gone? That whole thing that happened. So I don't put a lot in the vote of confidence. I think he was trying to do something there, but that doesn't I'm sure he still reserves the right, obviously, if things go sideways in this season and it turns out to be just, something that you throw in the circular file, basically, the garbage, then I'm pretty sure Benning will be gone. I'm going to say there's like a 95% chance that Benning's gone if they miss the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, this was a pretty big series right now between the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames, because I heard rumors that Benning was going to be looked at. He's kind of on the hot seat, because I think that the ownership was kind of given that vote of confidence to Travis Green and Benning there, trying to give him that confidence to maybe see if the team could give it a little bit more juice, which they did get a big victory, and they need one here tonight. They need to be able to grit it out and be able to tie this game up against the Calgary Flames and to be able to pull off something, because Benning is really on the hot seat right now. I don't know if it's Travis Green that's on the hot seat. I think Travis Green's a great coach, and he's been slowly showing that he can improve this team year by year. But Travis Green wasn't given a team this year. This team was not a complete team, and they lost a lot of players coming into the season, and it's kind of showing, missing some big goal scorers and only having really like Besser and Horvat and having Pettersson mostly score all your goals. You're not having a lot of depth goal scoring from your team, especially since Jake Virtanen only has 1 goal in 13 games. It's not looking very good for the Vancouver Canucks, and especially since you can't shut down defensively. Tyler Myers is not a good defenseman for your team, and going all the way down, Quinn Hughes is struggling defensively. He's able to put up points, but can't play very good defensively, and I think that's been the biggest story, especially for the Vancouver Canucks, and they're having to play Demko more than Holtby. Go ahead, Mark.
If I can jump in there, the thing with Hughes is, from all that I'm sort of determining in that, it was Tanev allowed him to sort of wheel and gun and that. So there was, I don't know. This is where I bring it back to. I don't know how much was really. I'm gonna say I don't know how much was really thought through. I'm not saying that they should have kept Markstrom, because that would have been an anchor when you're preparing for, the expansion draft. And then what do you expose yourself and lose Demko? I mean, we've got Demko, so I mean, this was different than Calgary. You kind of had to say, okay, let him go. You let Tanev go. I suppose they were thinking about age, and again, maybe the contract. I don't know if he got a no movement clause in Calgary. So my situation where I read this is that what's been the subtractions from Vancouver this year, and it may have been the right move in the long run, but the short-term pain is, yeah, you lose a guy. I mean, they rode Markstrom. I mean, how many times they were saying last year Markstrom was facing more shots than anyone else, in the league and all this. Tanev was key. Stetcher was key. And then you look at the playoff run that Vancouver had. I mean, there were a lot of those guys that stepped up. And I don't know all the whys and wherefores, why Benning made the decisions. Again, throw out the Toffoli thing, because it's easy with hindsight to say, oh, well, you shouldn't have traded for him. There was no idea there was going to be a flat cap. And that the biggest anchor for Vancouver has been they spent to the cap, which in this case has shown it's not always a good idea, because they had no wriggle room. And there's been games where you've had Eriksson sitting out, Virtanen sitting out. You have like something like $7 or $8 million sitting there. That would have paid for a Toffoli. And so this is the problem with where it comes back, that I think if Benning is shown the door, it's going to be because of that. And I think the Aquilinis are trying to be, or Francesco is trying to be patient. Ironically, he should have been more patient maybe in the past when he had a good GM in Dave Nonis before Mike Gillis. And so I think this is why you're seeing some deficiencies now, is because they did lose some guys, but they didn't. I mean, they've had some bright spots. They've had Höglander step in and, Levy to some degree. But I mean, clearly you're going to have a chemistry mismatch when you lose some of those guys. And I will give credit to Benning. When they signed Holtby, I thought, okay, well, that gives you sort of a veteran Stanley Cup winner there, as someone that I didn't ever see him being the number one. I saw him being like the 1B. It's Demko's job to try to grab now as the number one. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Holtby so far just kind of being that 1B, playing only 8 games to compare to Demko, which he's now playing his 11th game of the season. Both goalies not being putting up great numbers, but they're really not being bailed out right now either. Their team is just have not been able to play very well defensively, and you practically put everything up in a perfect bow tie for the Vancouver Canucks. It's some dumb moves, Benning not managing his team very well. But the thing was, I think Calgary or Vancouver fans were a little bit blind to this fact that they had no salary cap and that the rebuild was still going on. And I think the Tyler Toffoli trade was, the team was doing great last year for the Vancouver Canucks. It was starting to gain some momentum, but why make a deal when the player's contract is expiring? That doesn't really make sense to me, especially if you're a team that's like kind of sort of contending, but sort of not, because you still have a lot of bad contracts on your team. JT Miller was a smart trade. You pick up a player that still had a bit of a contract, and you're picking him up from the Vancouver or from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And same with Nate Schmidt. Tyler Toffoli lost him because of the fact that he was a UFA and he was a rental for that playoff run. which wasn't a bad idea for the Vancouver Canucks because they were in a very weak division. But then, of course, all COVID stuff happened, and then they did make it to the second round, and they did great. I feel like Benning is most likely going to be fired this year, and I'll send this one quickly over to Calvin on his thoughts. Do you think Benning should be fired if they keep losing games against Calgary after this series, or do you think they'll keep him?
Well, I mean, it's tough to tell, especially with the fact this is a COVID-shortened season and there's so many factors that played into the start of this season, like no training camps and stuff. Not that you can use that as a crutch to say, yeah, this is why our team sucks. Like, I mean, nobody necessarily would have thought this is how the season would have played out, but your team should always be prepared for the worst. I mean, if you're building a team, don't just build them for a specific scenario. Try and build them, for the worst case scenario, right? So as Mark was explaining, I don't think Jim Benning's done that in the best way. So I wouldn't be shocked if he does get released and let go at the end of the season, fired. But at the same time, just due to the fact it's a COVID-shortened season, I also wouldn't be shocked if he stays. Just the fact that the way the season is. I mean, it's a tougher division for sure, and all that. But I kind of want to flip it to you, Payton, and then on your side with the Oilers, do you see any changes coming to your office, especially with the Oilers kind of underperforming defensively this season, and also the fact that it just seems to always be the same scenario? It's just the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl show for the most part.
Yeah, that has kind of changed a little bit this past week with the Edmonton Oilers. The depth has actually been scoring a lot more there with Jujar, Ennis, and Archibald. They've been performing a little bit better. But the problem was we're in the same situation as Vancouver. We just don't have the cap. And I like Ken Holland. I've been liking his work, so I don't see any changes to him. Nor have I heard any rumors against Tippett either. I wouldn't mind seeing Tippett being left, but just the team we don't got a lot of good defensemen. And you've seen that in this past game tonight where we lost 6-5. We made a lot of defensive mistakes, and Tyson Barrie, the guy who we picked up in free agency, was a one-year gamble, right? Tyson Barrie was a one-year gamble to replace Klefbom, and sure, Barrie's been putting up the points, but when you're asking Barrie to play defense, he's just not there for you. And especially playing them alongside a Darnell Nurse, I'm not liking the pair myself. Every night I see it, I'm not liking the pair between Barrie and Nurse. And our goaltending, bails us out in some games, and then there's other games where it's just not there. We scored 5 goals against Connor Hellebuck, and we didn't win the game. We would have won that game. We were out shooting them. It was like 40-20 for shots. It was a dominant game for the Edmonton Oilers. But we had a decent week. We won against Ottawa twice, which, I mean, that's Ottawa. So, I mean, Ottawa did beat Toronto 6-5 in a very great comeback game, which we will be getting to later on. But we also beat Montreal, which I thought was one of our better played games. We had that killer mindset. And I felt like we had that killer mindset going up against the Winnipeg Jets. It's just the defensive mistakes that we made, from Tyson Barrie being dangled and not being able to competently play defense, to Mike Smith not being able to save a puck tonight and just not being that guy, to Mika Koskinen not making the saves that we needed him to make either. And that's been a big story. Koskinen was great at the start of the season, but now it's just ending up to be where both of our goaltending have been very suspect at best. And our coaching as well. Tippett has not been putting the best lines together, I feel. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was finally able to get himself going tonight. He's been struggling. He had like a 5-game point in this drought, but I think the best positive thing I could say out of this week was the Ennis, Kara, and Archibald line. They had a lot buzzing last night, especially tonight, and especially against the Canadiens. Jujar putting up some big points for the Edmonton Oilers, and even this stat, the Ennis, Kara, Archibald line combined for 18 hits tonight against the Winnipeg Jets, and the rest of the team only had 19. It was an amazing night for Archibald, Ennis, and Kara, and I'm excited to see how well they will continue to play. And also Bouchard, our young defenseman, and Evan Bouchard. He put up 2 points, I think, tonight. And he's been fantastic emerging into the Edmonton Oilers squad, and looks like honestly one of the best defensemen out there for the squad as well. Which I guess we'll jump on to next. I guess we'll jump on to the future matches up as the Jets will be taking on the Oilers on the 17th, which will be a fun matinee, which I'll send this over to, I'm thinking of the next question. You guys have any ideas? Because, man, my brain is absolute dead. Do you guys have anything else you guys want to talk about?
I was going to say, let's take a rare look outside of the North Division, because there are a couple games coming up this weekend that are going to be on my radar to watch. Is the 2 outdoor games that are going to go on in Lake Tahoe this weekend. There's one on the Saturday between the Vegas Golden Knights and Colorado Avalanche. And then on Sunday, I'm way far ahead of my schedule here, a little too far. But I believe on the Sunday it's Philadelphia and Boston, and outdoors on the 18th fairway. I forget what the name of the golf course is, but it's right adjacent to Lake Tahoe, and that's going to be quite the spectacle. I know we usually get an outdoor game every year, but this one is significant because it's during COVID-19 and a pandemic, and just more of a picturesque scene than just your average baseball or football stadium.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend. I can't wait to watch the games, especially being it's out on the lake. So, well, not exactly on the lake, but on the outskirts of the lake there. But honestly, I think it's going to be an exciting weekend. Honestly, we get 2 great games, Colorado versus Vegas. 2 great teams there with Nate McKinnon going to be out on the ice. I mean, that you can't get any better than that, and then a huge matchup between the Flyers and the Bruins. So I think honestly that is going to be a very exciting weekend, and especially like you said, it being during COVID, I didn't even think there was going to be an outdoor game this year until Lake Tahoe was announced. So it should be a really, really fun weekend to watch, and I'll send this over to Mark on his thoughts on the Lake Tahoe games.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think any of those games that kind of give a different feel, even if we've seen the outdoor games before. And this one, like you say, it's going to have the backdrop of the spectacular Lake Tahoe. I think it's going to be, it's going to be a nice sort of different spin on everything that's been sort of, I mean, it's just, instead of an empty arena, which I'm glad we have hockey, but it's funny just, as you watch these games and you see all the tarps and you see, they're making the best of it. But those are always good games. If you're looking for what other topic, I don't know how you want to edit this, but I was going to say about Burke landing up in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you want to get onto that.
That's another good topic. Yeah, we could definitely jump into the Berkey Hextall. I've been talking with a couple of my buddies, and I was slowly a little bit skeptical about it, but once I kept doing more research, I'm actually pretty excited about having Hextall and Berkey in Pittsburgh. I think honestly, the Pittsburgh situation is going to be a pretty tough one on whether you keep Crosby, Malkin, and the Tang there, which most likely they will, but you don't got the picks, you don't got the draft picks, so it's going to be a pretty hard situation there for Hextall and Berkey. But I think the biggest thing there in Pittsburgh is that they gotta start drafting there in Pittsburgh, and I think that's the way that Hextall is gonna go, especially with his draft record of getting Carter Hart in the second round.
Yeah.
Konecny, he's had some great draft picks over the years, so I'll send this one over to Mark on his thoughts about Berkey leaving Sportsnet and heading over to Pittsburgh. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think it came out of left field, at least as far as I was concerned. I didn't know that he was necessarily even thinking to get back into hockey. And apparently he did turn down one other unnamed offer a few years back because he liked what he was doing with Sportsnet and Hockey Night and what have you. He's certainly got the track record. I mean, I think he sometimes, people will criticize him. I don't know what happened. I didn't follow it that closely with Toronto, but I mean, I think he did some good things, and even to Calgary to some degree, I don't know what he did, but I mean, he going way back when his first GM stint after being sort of a right-hand man in Vancouver was with Hartford before they moved to Carolina. He had 1 or 2 years there, and then he left to join the league. I mean, he did some good things. He's got a good track record. And I mean, in this case, again, he's going to be like the Calgary role he had. He's not outright, going to be doing things. I think things are going to go through him, but somehow Hextall was willing to get on board there with them. And I think it will be interesting to see what they do, because it's funny. Somewhere I read, might have been in Twitter world, that I read something about people complaining in Pittsburgh about Rutherford, the previous GM. And I'm saying, you guys got 2 Stanley Cups. Like, how can you, and that's just with them. How can you be complaining? I've lost track how many cups they've had now. They've had the 2 in the 90s. I don't know if these were the only other 2. Oh, there's my dog in the background getting scared by one of his toys. The fact is, some teams don't know how good they've got it. And I mean, I think they definitely need to plan for the future there in Pittsburgh. But I just found that as an interesting side note, that there were people complaining about, the previous GM. I mean, heck, talk to a team that hasn't ever won a cup. Talk to a team that you guys have never seen win a cup in your lifetimes. I mean, 30 plus years for both your teams that you follow. I mean, the lifetime of this team for Vancouver. I mean, so I just think people's expectations are very different, and they don't know how good they've got it. And it will be interesting. I was surprised to see, I mean, if Gretzky could be traded, his original trade, well, then I guess anybody can be traded. I just found it interesting if they would trade Crosby, and anything's possible, I suppose, right? But I would still be a little shocked, depending, unless they were getting something really good back. And it would have to be that. I would still be a little bit shocked to see that happen.
Yeah, honestly, it's I love the Berkey signing, and I don't see Crosby or any of them leaving. But on the Jimmy Rutherford being fired, that was the way that Rutherford was as a GM. He sacrifices his entire future to win cups.
I don't think he was fired. He quit. He quit. Down.
Yeah, right. He quit.
Yeah.
He stepped up. I think it was also part of ownership. I think there was some kind of back and forth disagreements, because I heard Letang was kind of being up in the rumor mill, being traded when Rutherford was GM there. So I don't know what totally was going on, but Rutherford did quit because of family issues, which is all due respect. I hope he is on his best right now. Rutherford's a great GM. He won cups for Carolina and Pittsburgh, but the fact of the matter is Rutherford is a very risky GM. He's not a guy, he has an expiry date, because he will trade out everyone in your prospect system to make sure you win a cup. And that's what happened. Pittsburgh won a cup. They got what they wanted. They went back to back, which doesn't happen very much in this time and age, especially in the salary cap era. It's very hard to do it. So I think Pittsburgh Penguins fans should be happy about that. And I'll send this one over to Calvin on his thoughts of Berkey going to Pittsburgh, and Hextall as well.
All right, well, I'll start it off with a Berkey story, because I've actually met him in the flesh, believe it or not. It was kind of a cool chance encounter. It was when I was at the outdoor game last October in Regina.
Oh, yeah.
And I was actually taking a flight home the morning after the game to try and get back for school. And, I'm just sitting in the terminal waiting for my flight. It's an early morning flight. I think it was like an 8 or 9 o'clock flight. Well, who sits down on the row of seats across from me? Well, it's Brian Burke. And I'm like blinking my eyes like, am I seeing things right? Like, is this Berkey right in front of me? And I had I'm an outgoing guy. And normally I would be like, yeah, I'm going to say hi to him, tell him I'm in broadcasting, get any tips, maybe talk to him a little bit. But since it was early in the morning, I'm like, I don't want to poke the sleeping bear, I don't want to make him mad. So I just kind of held my tongue, but he ended up being on the same flight. He must have been coming to Calgary for, I don't know, a break, because obviously he has ties to the Flames. So I'm sure he's buddies with some of the guys, left on good terms for the most part. But that's my quick story about Berkey. But I did watch him on one of his last times on Hockey Night in Canada, and he said they have a win now attitude. So I believe that means that him and Ron Hextall are going to go into Pittsburgh, and they're going to keep their core intact. They'll keep they'll keep Malkin, they'll keep Crosby. I think they'll keep Letang and Tanev, and build around them. So if they are going to make any moves right away, I think it's just going to be more for a depth kind of deal. I don't think they're going to be trying to get rid of anyone too quickly. But then, obviously, how long does that last? Maybe another season, season and a half, and then they'll have to figure something else. But yeah, so Burke did go out publicly and say they're in a win now mode, and that's how he's going to try and work things when he gets to Pittsburgh.
Which I think, honestly, is not a bad idea for Pittsburgh. They still got the key pieces, and I mean, the way that they were playing against Washington on Sunday there yesterday, they played a really good game, honestly. They played a really good game against Washington. They actually had a 3-goal lead for the first time this year, and actually won by not just 1 goal. You had Pierre-Olivier Joseph, who's been stepping up for the team. John Marino, who's been playing great for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if they continue, I mean, they'll make it into the playoffs. But I think the biggest question is definitely all the chances with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, and what they're going to be doing with them for the future of that squad. With Malkin, as he has 2 years left on his deal. But we'll get over to the person that keeps getting tossed around the league right now. He is Alex Galchenyuk, which I'll toss this over to you guys. As hockey players ourselves, if we were in a position like Alex Galchenyuk, who's now played for pretty decent amount of teams. He went from Pittsburgh to Minnesota last year. He signed with Ottawa, got traded to Carolina, and then got traded to Toronto. As a hockey player, how would your confidence be as a player if you were to be traded like that so many times and to really just not have, I guess, a permanent job? We'll start it off with Mark. How would your confidence be if you were to be traded around the entire league? Would you be able to kind of get that game back, or do you think you would just maybe leave the NHL and maybe go and play in Europe?
Well, I think he's probably, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's a smart enough guy. He's probably had some talks with previous coaches, whatever managers, and there's probably been some deficiencies. Usually a player is traded, either that's the asset you want to get. You have to move to get something else back, think of the one that comes to mind. Doesn't mean Tyler Madden was a bad prospect with Vancouver. He was the asset that was able to get Toffoli out of LA. And yeah, we'll leave that one there because that's like pouring salt in the wound. And I self-inflicted myself with that one, the whole Toffoli thing. But with this guy, I think the situation was it was probably a preconceived move where I forget how it went. Didn't he go to Carolina? And now he's been flipped to, who is it, Toronto?
Yeah, Galchenyuk. Yeah, he went from Ottawa to Carolina, and then he's dumped off there in Toronto.
So it was probably a move where Ottawa, for whatever reason, maybe didn't want to move him to Toronto. So maybe there was something behind the scenes with Carolina where maybe Toronto figured something.
With this deal, Ottawa got Ryan Dzingel, a nice speedy left wing for Cedric Paquette and Alex Galchenyuk. So they picked up a decent player in Dzingel. So that's why they made the deal with Carolina. But I don't think Carolina wanted to wait for Galchenyuk, nor did they needed Galchenyuk in their lineup. They wanted more of the Cedric Paquette, who will be more of a use for the Carolina Hurricanes roster, especially since he's a nice chippy fourth line guy who's won a cup there in Tampa, which will be a nice pickup there for Carolina. But yeah, Galchenyuk then weirdly got put on waivers and then sent off to Toronto, and he won't have to quarantine for Toronto either. So that's a big thing as well, is that he won't have to quarantine and he'll be ready for whenever the Toronto Maple Leafs want to use him.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. Galchenyuk, when he first got traded, so when he's traded to Carolina, he was told to report to the AHL. So it was obvious he wasn't going to fit with Carolina unless they had injuries. So, and he was going to take his time to do that. Like when you have to report to an AHL team, they don't give you a hard deadline necessarily, especially this season where it's quarantines and the AHL is a little bit scattered just because of COVID and how they have some teams north of the border, some teams, like case in point, the Stockton Heat or the Calgary Flames AHL affiliate, but they're actually playing in Calgary this season. They made a deal to come over the border and stay in Calgary, play from the Saddle Dome. So there's a whole bunch of things going on there. So Galchenyuk wasn't really moving very quickly. I don't even think he left Canada after the first trade. And now that he's traded to Toronto, there's, like you were saying, Payton, no worry about the whole quarantine deal, and maybe a small one just because he's going from the one Ottawa to Toronto. Not that it's a very far, travel, but he's starting to become a journeyman, and that's that's not necessarily a bad thing in the National Hockey League, but it's probably definitely mentally tasking on you. You can't really settle down in one area. You don't know how comfortable you are there. You can't necessarily make a home. You can for maybe the off season if you like a city enough. But it's definitely I would think it's tough mentally on him. But he just obviously he still wants to be in the game, and he still wants to find a place where he fits enough that he can become more of a role player and not have to worry about being moved up and down and out of the lineup. So it'll be interesting to see because Toronto's pretty stacked. So I feel like if anything, he might just get placed on the taxi squad. And if that's not the case, then he ends up with the Marlies. But at least it's close to Toronto. So if they're ever needing that depth, then it's an easy call up.
Yeah, especially with the injuries Toronto's been facing in the past little bit. They've been dealing with a couple. Joe Thornton did enter back in the lineup tonight, and he did pretty good. Unfortunately, Toronto did lose in a very embarrassing fashion, as they did have a 5-1 lead.
Sorry.
And it sounded like a goal, a tie game.
Sorry.
Wow, that's a huge goal there for the Vancouver Canucks live on the podcast.
The Flames, did they not have a power play? Was that a shorthanded goal?
It was an empty net.
They did.
No. The Flames had a power play.
Oh my
Flames
God.
had a power. Put that back. They'll put that back up. I mean, it's just they took it off on the TV feed, but they did. So that was a shorthanded goal with the goaltender pulled. So I guess it's still shorthanded. Vancouver needed that. This is the type of comeback that Vancouver was known for especially last year, and it's been lacking this year. So that's good. Now they just got to nurse it. Sorry, Calvin, but they got to nurse it to the end of the third and not, at least get 1 point.
At least get that point. I think that's the biggest thing for the Vancouver Canucks is get 1 point at a time right now for their team, and that's a huge game-tying goal live here on the podcast, and still a power play here for Calgary as well with 50 seconds, and that will continue into overtime.
It was a Brock Bezer. Let's coin the term Bezer beater, hey?
Yeah.
It was a Bezer beater.
A Bezer beater.
Yeah, sorry, that's going to be shit. I thought that was going in the net there when I saw the green light come on for half a second. I thought that was so they get the 1 point, but that'll be.
Well, they could possibly get 2 points. We're going to overtime, so we'll have to see how it ends up.
It's going to be a very energetic OT here, especially lots of ice for both the Flames and Canucks. We know when there's ice, these two teams can move the puck really well. It's just going to be a matter of which goaltender can hang in there, and then same thing for the shootout. We got players who are really good at picking their spots, and so it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But looks like
I was going to say that's going to be interesting editing. If maybe you want to leave it in there, Payton.
I'll just leave it in there, man. That's good stuff. That's the live moments that we need. Sooner or later, we're going to be doing a live on a Stanley Cup championship night or whatever, and we'll be.
You're doing something Calgary, Edmonton. Maybe at one point I'll have to do it Edmonton, Vancouver with you or whatever. I mean, we could certainly do a Calgary, Vancouver, but these are the Calgary, Vancouver. So I guess we're kind of doing it, Calvin, in a way. So.
Well, I think we'll wrap things up here for the podcast. I think it's been a great episode. We've been having a great game between the Flames and the Canucks. And not just that, it's been a great overall week, and we got another great week of hockey. We got Lake Tahoe coming up, so I hope you guys enjoy that. We also got some great games.
Two Battle of Albertas. Don't forget.
Yeah, two Battle of Albertas.
Weekend also.
A back-to-back between the Oilers and the Flames, which should be absolutely exciting. It should be a great weekend. So hope you viewers are enjoying yourself and have a great, wonderful week. And any last words, guys? We'll start off with Mark quickly.
No, it's going to be interesting to see how, where we're at when we come the next podcast for Vancouver standpoint, because, they didn't make it easy on themselves in this game that we're watching, or when we're recording this, but they've managed to get it to.
Sorry to cut you off, Mark. I called it. Flames win overtime. They just scored.
Oh, wow. Are you kidding me?
It was
just like that, real quick. Painless.
Hang on, I didn't even have it on the live feed. Thanks for the spoiler. Jeez.
I'm sorry.
Quick and painless.
let me just see it right here. Somehow it went off the live feed. I'm just going to see it here as it plays out.
I believe it's.
Because they had the power play. They had the power play. Yeah.
Johnny Hockey.
Damn.
Yeah, they had the power play.
Wow,
and
what a shot! What
but you know
shot!
They get the 1 point out of it, and you know what? They did what they had to do, and good on Calgary and good on Vancouver. I mean, so basically, Calgary gains. It's only a 1 point advantage they get instead of 2 points now in terms of the gap, or the net effect for Vancouver and Calgary, if you know what I'm saying. So it would have been great if Vancouver could have got 2 points, but good on Calgary. They did what they had to do. They had the power play in overtime, and they did what they had to do, right? So
I do have to say, it looks like Travis Green is challenging something because the refs are all hovered at the penalty box. It looks like they're looking to see if Tkachuk might have been offside, possibly Gaudreau. Right. Or even who's on the far side there. I can't see the number, but it looks like it's a close call. It might even be. That's a really close one. I'm sorry, I'm live watching the replay.
So, Calvin, I'll quickly send this one over to you for your final thoughts, and then we'll shut things down so we can watch this replay. So I'll send it over to you, Calvin.
Okay, well, it looks like the Flames are heading off the bench, so that's final. Looks like they're keeping it a good goal. So
okay. Well, that's
final
perfect.
thoughts. Flames ended up taking that's 2 games now over the Canucks out of their first 3 meetings. The next one, the Flames play the Canucks in Calgary, so that'll be the 4th and final of this little mini series. We'll see if the Canucks can try and even things out at 2 wins apiece. So that'll be very exciting. I'm also excited for the Battle of Alberta, as I was saying, and then those 2 Lake Tahoe games. It's got lots of hockey to look forward to this weekend, and it's reading week, so all I get to do is just sit back and relax and enjoy a week of hockey.
Yeah, I feel you, and I can't wait to watch the Battle of Alberta. It should be a fun weekend, and it should be a fun week of hockey, but we're going to end the episode here, guys. We will be shooting the next episode next week, and it should be a fun week. We'll talk about the Lake Tahoe games and the Battle of Alberta, so we're going to end things here, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Adios, amigos.
Cheers.